Okay, so in this module, we're going to have a short discussion on why business continuity is important. It sounds intuitive, but Tony, talk about this for a minute. I know you got a couple of fact slides and things that will help that. So let's jump into this topic for a quick.
Well, the best example I can use is that just think of why businesses have insurance. They have insurance in case something bad happens. So why is a business continuity important? The fact is that you've thought through in case something bad were to happen. The next slide is a good example of some of the statistics that actually drive the importance. Per FEMA, what is the percentage of small businesses that never reopen after an accident? So just think about this. It's got to be small, or is it maybe a little bit more? So the fact is, the next slide will show you that 40% of the small businesses out there that are impacted by a natural disaster never reopen. And just think about what the impact is if that small business is in a small community. Let's say it's a small hardware store that people need, or a small grocery store, any type of small business. And if it is in an area out there that really is the center of a community, now you've negatively impacted the community. Now, of those 40% that never reopen after a disaster, FEMA also says that another 25%, if they do reopen, they fail within a year. So think about what that number is in regards to the community impact. One of the I've dealt with a bunch of deployments in my career, and I can tell you that when individuals can't even go down the street to be able to get some simple basic supplies, and all of a sudden now they've got to go 40 or 50 miles, and now they've got to go over treacherous roads, and maybe they don't have a vehicle. The fact is that the cascading impact to a community can be devastating. Another statistic, and this is one that I've seen recently, FEMA stated that following a disaster, 90% of smaller companies fail within a year unless they can assume operations within 5 days. And a lot of folks think that small businesses are businesses that have less than 10 or 20 people. A small business, depending on what sector, can have 500 or even over 1,000 employees. So the fact is that when you take a look at it, these businesses that we talk about when we say small businesses, the fact is that there's more of them scattered across the community than what they'd identify as a large community. And I've seen the sign just like this many, many times, where individuals just are not even going to try to reopen. Either they know that they can't afford the insurance whenever they're reopen, or they know they won't be able to get contractors in there on a timely basis. The fact is, I've seen more close signs immediately after a disaster, and it's just heartbreaking.
And Tony, predominantly the reason for that is they just can't run the company 5 days that with no revenue, they're done. Is it a
Well,
uh,
just think about this. I had a client that recently had in their plan that the business continuity plan they had was that if they were basically flooded or were impacted by a natural disaster, it would take all hands on deck for them to be able to get that company back up and operating. And I was able to interview all the way down to the employee that was on the front line. And one of the questions I asked them is that if a flood or natural disaster were to hit this community, are you coming to work? And a majority of them said no, because that's probably going to impact my family. So the fact is that I'm going to be at my house taking care of my family, or helping my parents, or helping my elderly neighbor. So the fact was, I went back to him and said, "You have this plan that 100% of the personnel are going to respond. They're not. You have less than 50%. So what is going to be your business continuity plan for staff augmentation? What resources can you send out to a contractor so that you don't have that resource requirement?" And all of a sudden, it threw their plan into chaos, and now they've got to look at it from a whole new perspective. Again, it's the advantages of being able to deep dive a particular business continuity risk to be able to get good information.
you think that's kind of what happened during COVID to companies? Everybody assumes people are going to come to work, right? Um, what have you seen as far as the impact from a COVID scenario like that?
Same scenario, and I think it's still happening today. I think that I think individuals are uncomfortable and going back to that environment. And especially once I think there's a